We talk PLD buyout, goaltending, Stanley Cup memories, and more on this Friday fan feedback edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love you to leave us a positive comment and review on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. And we're on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years, the Fox Sports Radio Network, also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 17 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Ever dreamed about becoming an NHL GM and managing your hockey franchise? Well, now you can with Ultimate Hockey GM. It's completely free, and Locked On listeners get a 100% free bonus to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in the game store. To download the game, just visit hockeygm.app or go to the App Store. Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. It is a Kings fan feedback show. No Kings news to pass along to you today from Friday, so we won't waste any time. We'll get right into your emails. And our first email comes from Andy, and he is in Guelph in Ontario. And he says, I've been a Kings fan since 1993 and confirmed them as my favorite team in 2003 when they drafted Dustin Brown. I'm from Guelph, where Brown and Drew Doughty played in the OHL. On your recent episode on the Pierre Luc Dubois and the contract, or excuse me, on the trade rumors, it got me thinking, I think we should keep PLD. I'm just as fed up with the last season as any fan, but I think a move to left wing and sliding Quinton Byfield to center is the move. Hopefully a couple of years on, the left side will help PLD, and then he could reassume pivot duties when Kopitar retires. I'm hopeful line combinations for next season will be Kopitar, Kempe, and Fiala on the top line, Byfield centering with PLD, and a trade or free agent winger, Carl Grundstrom, Philip Deneau, and Alex Laferriere on the third line, and then utilize Ontario and free agent toughness on the fourth line. I think Trevor Moore, love him, could be moved while his stock is at the highest for a right-handed shot threat. Is there potential with moving Moore? Roy money and Arvidsson money off the books that they could trade for a Mitch Marner. Package would need to be big, so wishful thinking. I agree. It's time for Brant Clark. Go Kings, go. And again, that was Andy in Guelph up in Ontario. So some good stuff there, Andy. I would say starting with your ideas for the lines for next season, I just don't think that Quinton Byfield's ready to be a top six center in the NHL. I could be wrong. Certainly with Jim Hiller coming in, I would think all options are on the table. So it's not impossible that could happen. Again, I personally don't think Byfield's ready for that. And I think they want to give Pierre Luc Dubois another try at center, playing in a top six role, to see how he will do in that position. That's my opinion on that. As for a Mitch Marner trade, these things are very fun to talk about, and I have no problem with something like that being brought up. But you have to remember, number one, Mitch Marner, who, by the way, if for people who aren't fans of the rest of the league, perhaps maybe you're just a Kings fan, Mitch Marner, very talented forward who plays for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Toronto has had a lot of frustration and failure in the playoffs. So there are certainly a lot of fans there looking to change things up with their core four, as they like to call them: William Nylander, John Tavares, Mitch Marner, and of course, Austin Matthews. So, there's certainly the potential that they might want to move Marner. And he's also an unrestricted free agent after this season. However, Mitch Marner has a full no movement clause. So he's not going anywhere unless he agrees to go somewhere. And everything I've heard and read is that he wants to stay in Toronto. So if the Kings were, let's just say for the sake of argument, though, that he was willing to come to the LA Kings, what are the Kings going to have to give up for Mitch Marner? It would have to be some sort of a sign and trade, because you're not going to trade for a guy who's a UFA after this season and then he goes somewhere else. So it would have to be some sort of a sign and trade. And what would the Kings have to give up? Well, probably a Quentin Byfield would have to go the other way and something else. You really want to do that? I wouldn't. And look, Mitch Marner is a very talented player. The numbers speak for themselves, but his playoff performances also speak for themselves. He's a guy who he comes up very small in the big games. And do we really is that the guy we want? We're trying to get over the hump in the playoffs, not bring in some other guy who doesn't, really look to elevate his game in the bigger moments. So again, it's fun to talk about, but I can't see that happening. As for Trevor Moore, that's an interesting idea to trade Trevor Moore. I would say no to that because I believe his 30-goal season is what he can be in the NHL and what I believe he's going to be in the NHL. But if you're of the belief that this is the ceiling for Trevor Moore and his stock will never be higher and you're not really convinced he's a 30-goal guy, maybe you think he's just a 20-goal guy, I could understand the thinking on that. But I think the biggest reason for keeping him is, again, I do think he's a high 20, low 30 goal scorer, and he's going to make $4.2 million for the next 4 years. And if you have a guy who's a high 20, low 30 goal scorer making that much money, $4.2 million for the next 4 years, it's a very reasonable price for a player who has that kind of production. So again, if you think this was a career year for him, he's never going to reach these numbers again, this is not who he is. And granted, he never has done this before in his NHL career, then I could understand the thinking. But good stuff, all fun topics to talk about. But I would have to say I can't see Mitch Marner coming here. I would be very surprised if they trade Trevor Moore, and I just don't think Quentin Byfield's ready for that top 6 center position just yet. Our next email comes from David. He is in Las Vegas. He says, not sure if you heard, but Oilers coach Chris Knobloch threw some shade at the Kings penalty kill after Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final against Florida. He mentioned how the Panthers make it tough on them with their pressure, unlike a team like the Kings do. I know that we had a good regular season penalty kill last year, but it has been frustrating watching us take the same failed back down approach on the kill against the Oilers. You have to pressure them to have a chance. I hate that we don't go after them at the blue line or on the boards in the penalty kill. Hope we are learning from this final. And again, that was from David in Las Vegas. I did not hear Chris Knobloch make that comment. I did hear him say he was asked going into the final about the Panthers having finals experience from the previous year when they went to the Stanley Cup final and the Oilers not having any experience. And he made some crack about, what did the Buffalo Bills do with their championship experience? If you don't remember, in the NFL, the Buffalo Bills went to 4 straight Super Bowls, lost all 4 of them. Well, I would say watching the finals so far that the Panthers experience absolutely has come into play. So Chris Knobloch kind of has some egg on his face over those comments, I would say. But I do agree with you, David. I would say the Florida Panthers penalty kill has been tremendous. Huge reason why they're up 3-0 on the Oilers. And yes, you're right. It's one of those things. You've got to have guys you trust. It's got to be a good unit, but you do have to be aggressive against that power play for the Oilers. And maybe, just maybe, the Florida Panthers have given the rest of the league the template to try and contain that very good power play. This email comes from, we got another email here from the state of Nevada. This is from Chris. He's in Carson City. He says, really like the show so far during the offseason. Can't wait for free agency and the draft and see what the Kings are going to do. I was thinking about what I would be interested in when there isn't a ton of Kings news to talk about. Here's some ideas I think that could be covered. How about historical player profiles? Gretzky, Robitaille, Blake are easy ones. You could go deeper with McSorley, Rudy, Curry, just to name a few. Deadmarsh, Paul Fee, Nordstrom from the early 2000s. Could look at some historic teams like the 93 team or the 2001-2 team that knocked off the Red Wings, the 2010 team that made the playoffs for the first time in years and started to build to the 2012 team. Just a thought, Eddie. Appreciate what you do for us Kings fans every day. Keep up the good work and go Kings go. That was from Chris in Carson City, Nevada. All great ideas, Chris. I think that is absolutely something that we can try and incorporate into some of our off-season shows. I would certainly be more than willing to do some of that and do kind of a deep dive on some of the great players in Kings history. So I will definitely keep that in mind. We'll put that on the list for some of our shows, after the draft, after free agency. We'll be getting that kind of more of a dead period in the off season. So I appreciate that idea. And I would say anyone else out there that have some ideas for some off season features for us to do, I would absolutely love to get your input on that. So yes, absolutely. Thank you for the feedback on that. And we can definitely do that in the off season. We have a very interesting Kings fan moment to share from the Stanley Cup. And we have a couple of international emails to share with you as well. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, Locked On Kings fans, I want to tell you about the mobile game Ultimate Hockey GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NHL GM and managing your favorite hockey franchise? Do you think you could run the Kings better than current GM Rob Blake? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is most definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, and lead it to glory. Hire the right coaches and staff, trade players or draft picks, navigate through free agency and the draft, all in a challenging and realistic game world. As a Kings fan, you know there is no offseason. GMs are constantly making moves at every point of the year to improve their team's chances, and that's why I think you're going to love this game. Ultimate Hockey GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want, when you want to, and Locked On listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On NHL in the game store. So make sure to check it out. Download the game. Just visit hockeygm.app, APP, or look up the app in the stores. Ultimate Hockey GM, start your dynasty today. We have an email from Germany. This comes from Danilo. And Danilo, if you happen to send us a future email, would love to know exactly where you are in Germany. Even if you think it's a place we've never heard of, I'd love to know what city you're in Germany. And thank you for the email. He says, my gut feeling is that we could be in for another surprise related to PLD's contract. I haven't thrown away the possibility of a buyout yet. I could imagine that the nature of the new Byfield contract, for example, depends on whether you get PLD off the books or not. And of course, that depends on whether the Stanley Cup final is finished before PLD's 26th birthday or not. I see two scenarios. A, the Stanley Cup final will be decided before June 24th, and you can do a one-third buyout, and they will. Or B, the Stanley Cup final is not finished by June 24th, and PLD will remain in LA. A or B will, of course, have different consequences, such as Byfield's next contract. RB stays or goes, perhaps a new contract for Roy, etc. A player does not always accept a new contract if it is significantly higher. There are also so many aspects to consider: role in the team, new coach, will the team play for the cup, new teammates, environment for the family, maybe even school of the children go to play crucial roles. Many factors, just not money in the eyes. That's why I don't necessarily see Roy actually leaving, but all that depends on what happens to PLD. And I don't think it's decided yet, even though Rob and Luke said in the exit interviews that there won't be a buyout. Thanks for your great work. Still enthusiastic everydayer and Kings fan. And again, that was Danilo in Germany. I know there have been some recent chatter about a PLD buyout. And I will say this, just because Rob Blake says it's not going to happen doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And I'm not trying to say that Rob Blake is just a flat out liar, but if you follow sports at all, you know, players, coaches, GMs, they lie all the time. And they could just say, well, at the time we were thinking this, but now we think this. And it happens all the time. So just because Rob Blake says it's not going to happen doesn't necessarily mean that's the case. That said, I will be very surprised if a buyout does happen. I know Frank Cervelli from the Daily Faceoff posted a story that got some traction recently and got some discussion on this. He had a list of, it was like top 10, top 15 players out there most eligible to be bought out, and he had Pierre Luc Dubois at the top of the list. Not that that's frankly breaking news. He clearly would be the biggest target out there that could be in line for a buyout, and that would be the biggest story of any player that we bought out without question. I still will be very surprised if it happens. And by the way, certainly it appears with Florida leading 3-0 over Edmonton, the Stanley Cup finals are in fact going to end before Pierre Luc Dubois' 26th birthday. So unless something really miraculous happens with Edmonton, the window will be open for a little while for the LA Kings to buy out Pierre Luc Dubois. I still don't believe it'll happen, but it does appear that window will be open for just a little while. Our next email comes from Marco in Costa Rica. He has an interesting Stanley Cup memory to share. He says he was at Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final in 2012. He says, I was running back and forth for beer during the TV timeout since it was normally a shorter line than after periods. So I'm in line for a beer. Rob Scuderi gets leveled. There's a beautiful lady in front of me in line. We've never met. We're commenting on how horrible the hit was, and we can win the cup with this power play. He says, after the third goal during the power play, all of us in line were going crazy and celebrating. She says, her and I lock eyes and we kiss, like real lip kiss. We continue celebrating. Didn't see her again at the game. Next year, I'm out on the patio at Staples Center, and I see her walking towards us with a date. She sees me, runs over, hugs me, small lip kiss. We both say, go Kings. She walks off with her date, who asked, what was that? She replies, you wouldn't understand, and keeps walking. Never saw her again, but that was a special piece of 2012 magic. Do we believe Marco in this story? I mean, it's a great story if it's true. You know what, Marco? I'm going to choose to believe you with this story. That's a good story. I will say this, and not to get too sappy here, but one of the things I love about sports is it brings people together. Doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter what color your skin is, doesn't matter what your religion is. If you're a Kings fan, you're my brother or you're my sister. You know, when we're in the stands together and we're cheering together, we're friends. And I think and it's not just Kings, but whatever. I think that's a really, really amazing thing, especially in this day and age in our landscape out there, where we got a lot of people disagreeing about things, and some of it's pretty ugly. But I've always felt sports can be a really awesome thing to bring people together from all different walks of life, male, female, young, old, black, white, whatever. And that's awesome. I know I've been at games before as a fan where I have hugged complete strangers. So yeah, I mean, they're wearing the same jersey I am, and we're high-fiving, and it's awesome. It's awesome. So I certainly have never kissed another woman at a game. But Marco, good story. And that's an interesting way of bringing some fans together, I guess, in that one. Jeremiah in Hawthorne checks in to say, I was listening to your video about the Kings winning the Stanley Cup for the first time, and I wanted to say that when they won the 2 cups, I was a child. I will never forget it, though, when they were down 3-0 to the Sharks. That series was one of the most stressful series I ever felt. When they won the cup, it was a relief, and I'm glad I got to experience them winning the cup, but I was just so young that I really hope we'll see them win again soon. I have met Jeremiah, and I would guess he's in his early 20s. So obviously when the Kings won the cup, 10 and 12 years ago, he was probably right around the age. I remember when I really got into sports, I was like 8, 9, 10 years old. So he would be around that age where he would probably remember it, but maybe not old enough to appreciate it. So, while people like me who are thrilled the Kings have won the Stanley Cup and, have those memories forever. Yeah, I mean, obviously I hope the Kings can win it again, not just for me, but for people like Jeremiah and people who maybe are just now becoming Kings fans to get to have that thrill as well, kind of to sell the next generation on Kings hockey. So yeah, for Jeremiah, for your sake, and for the younger Kings fans, certainly hope we can see another Kings Stanley Cup here in the not too distant future. A few more emails to get to. We'll do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Drive passion and patience. Drive passion and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it is easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, we got a couple more emails. Hopefully we can squeeze them in here. This one comes from Brian. He's in Los Alamitos, and he says, seeing the Oilers in the final, even though they're down 3-0, definitely makes me feel worse about where the Kings are. It makes me realize how little progress the team has made since both teams first met in the playoffs 3 years ago. At that point, I felt both teams were relatively even, but since then, the Oilers have grown and learned from their playoff experience, while the Kings are just a team that makes it to the postseason, but is no serious threat to anyone. Rob Blake has laid a nice foundation, but I don't think he's the man who can build a championship team. On another note, I just heard Patrick Laine has requested a trade from the Jets. I don't know why, but I was panic-stricken for a few short seconds, believing Rob Blake would try and acquire the troubled forward, sign him to a multi-year $70 million contract, and then play him on the fourth line. I know this is highly unlikely because ownership would never allow it, but after Blake's deal to get Pierre Luc Dubois, this scared me a little. Finally, I really enjoyed the show with Mike Fuda. Can't believe it's been 10 and 12 years since the Kings won the Cup. Before those 2 Cup wins, it seemed like the Kings' only claim to fame was their acquisition of Wayne Gretzky. Now I rarely hear his name mentioned. I will always have great affection for all the guys who brought the Stanley Cup to LA, the hardest trophy to win in pro sports. And that is from Brian in Los Alamitos. And I will say, Brian, watching the Stanley Cup finals, a couple of things have really, really dawned on me. And remembering those Stanley Cup teams is, number one, boy, it doesn't seem like the Kings are close to being where the Florida Panthers are as far as the way they play hockey right now. And they're certainly not alone. But the other thing is, it is such a hard trophy to win. You are so right, man. The Stanley Cup finals are so, it's a war of attrition. And anybody who's left standing at the end holding that beautiful trophy over their heads have earned it, man. And it is the hardest trophy to win. I absolutely agree with you. Yeah, not the Patrick Laine in a King sweater. No, let's not even go there. Our next email comes from Jim in Lakewood, and I was at his house last weekend for a Stanley Cup final watch party. He says, thanks for the visit last weekend. Definitely hope your wife can be there next time and look forward to meeting others on the channel. I mentioned that maybe we could have a everydayer watch party at Jim's house next year, and he seems very receptive to that. So that could be fun. It's something we will look to do next season. Says, I wanted to give my 2 cents about the PLD situation. I believe that the longer the duration is between the Panthers winning and his birthday, it's more likely the buyout will happen. He says, I listened to the NHL channel all day at work on Wednesday, and they were talking about it for a good 15 minutes. Blake wants to look like a savior, and here's his chance. Jettison this lazy bastard, pay the $1 to $2 million per year for a while, go out and get a legit number one high-end goalie like Linus Ullmark, UC Saros, or Jacob Markstrom. Get 1 or 2 other players, and Blake will look like a savior and be lauded by all Kings faithful. Blake wants to save his ass, and now is his chance. And who knows, if he gets 2 or 3 solid players, no one will even remember the stupid chapter of the $8 million slacker. By the way, this dude is a completely disrespectful person to the hard-working people who buy tickets to pay his salary. Yeah, Jim is a big Pierre Luc Dubois fan, as you can tell. As far as the Kings going out and getting a legit number one high-end goalie, I would say the people who think that that's important can certainly look to Sergei Bobrovsky and the Florida Panthers right now and say, we need a guy like that to win a cup. He makes $10 million a year. And if the Florida Panthers win the cup, which it looks like they will, they'll be more than happy that they signed him and paid every cent of that contract. I will say this, I'm still on the other side of this debate. Do you need to have a $10 million-ish goaltender? I still think you can win a cup without a guy like that. I am more in favor of paying my goalie $5 million or less a year. You got Connor Hellebuck out there who's making big bucks. He didn't come close to making the final. Igor Shesterkin with the Rangers, his next deal, he's going to make big bucks. And I think he's great, but the Rangers didn't make the Stanley Cup final either. I still think you can get to the final and win with a great team and a good goalie. But there is certainly debate to be had on that. And Sergei Bobrovsky is an example of maybe you do need one of those guys. There are certainly different thoughts on that. And there's evidence on both sides of it that you can point to. So, will the Kings go out and get another goalie? that obviously is the huge question this offseason for the LA Kings. It's something that I think is a possibility, but again, it's not like they also have a ton of assets to really give up to try and get somebody like that as well if they are going to go out and get somebody in a trade. So, but it certainly wouldn't shock me if that happened. I will also say, as far as the Pierre Luc Dubois, I've said it already. I would be shocked if they do buy out Pierre Luc Dubois, and I know you heard them talk about it on the NHL Network radio. But again, they're just talking about it. They've got, they don't want to just talk about the Stanley Cup final. There's other things to talk about. I work in sports talk radio. I know you talk about things that stir up some debate, whether you really think it's going to happen or not. That's really irrelevant. It's like, what is something interesting we can talk about and debate back and forth? So the fact that they spent, a segment of it on NHL Network radio, I don't think makes it any more likely that there's any real movement as far as the Kings buying out Pierre Luc Dubois. This came from Instagram from Greg Steckel. He's in Simi Valley. And he says, I had a great idea for a Kings watch party. There are a lot of Kings fans here in Simi Valley. There's a great sports bar called Cronies. A lot of Kings fans go there to watch games. Also, it would be awesome if you could get local resident Bob Miller to come to a watch party. I've been a fan of the Kings since 1988. Would love to talk Kings hockey with you. I listen to all your podcasts each day. Keep up the awesome work. Look, going forward for next season, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to something like that. I will say, Greg, I would probably throw the ball or pass the puck over to you and say, if you're looking to organize something like that and you have a number of Kings fans who would get together and invite me to come up there, I think that's something that would be possible. But like I said, our guy Jim in Lakewood is going to have, apparently, is going to host an everydayer watch party at least once next season, probably early on, to see how it goes. And if you're interested in that, obviously we'll talk about it more next season. But if you're interested in something like that, let me know. And could we do some other ones around the Southern California area? Absolutely. I would love to do that. I love meeting Kings fans. I love talking hockey. So absolutely, that would be something that is possible. Our final email comes from Edwin in Brea, who has embraced his new nickname as the Closer. He says, hey, it's the Closer again. I called him the Closer last week because he's almost always the final person to send an email. He's the last guy that we get. And so that's why he usually is the last email we read. But anyway, he says, and he emails every week. He says, makes sense that I'm the closer because I'm a goalie. Usually the last line of defense. Speaking of goalies, I have to again strongly disagree with you if you think that Cam Talbot is the best free agent goalie available. To me, stats can be overrated and misleading. You can have good stats, however, to win in the playoffs or in clutch situations, a goalie has to be mentally tough. When things are on the line, you need your goalie to be cool under pressure with a strong mental poise. That's why Jonathan Quick came through for us with 2 cups. GM Rob Blake said in the Hiller press conference, we need to get uncomfortable to challenge the team, and they need to go in a different direction with the goalie. That's what Edwin is saying about being uncomfortable. He says, either our pipeline with Eric Portillo, why not give this guy a chance? I'm high on Alec Nedeljkovic. One name Kings should consider is Chris Drieger. I also wanted to mention that the past week was the anniversary of our 2 cup wins. To me, our second cup win is more special because it made the Kings, for now, the most successful team in the Pacific time zone. Most of my friends and teammates are Ducks and keep trolling me when they say they were the first to win the cup. However, it was Wayne Gretzky that caused the Ducks to be born. Without us, there would be no franchise in Anaheim. That is actually a fair point. A lot of people do believe without Wayne Gretzky coming to Los Angeles, the Anaheim Ducks or the Mighty Ducks or whatever they're called would not even exist. So that is certainly some scoreboard for you, Edwin. I don't think Eric Portillo is ready to be a number one goalie at the NHL level. I could not disagree more with you on Alex Nedeljkovic and Chris Drieger. Chris Drieger can't even be one of the 2 goalies for the Kraken. But you want the Kings to make this guy the number one goalie? And Alex Nedeljkovic's numbers are all worse than Cam Talbot's. So, and what has he ever done in the playoffs? So we will continue to agree to disagree about Cam Talbot and what else is out there available for the Kings in free agency to try and upgrade that position. Thank you to everyone who took the time to send an email. Very cool that we had a Canadian email, we had Costa Rica, we had Germany, as well as our local Kings fans as well. So very cool kind of cross section of Kings fans. That was awesome. to hear, and appreciate the emails. Good emails this week. We will continue, obviously, our fan feedback shows every Friday during the off season. So keep those emails coming. Love for you guys to have your voice on the show. The email address, as always, is lockedoneddie@gmail.com. Would love you guys to stay interactive on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram. We're at Locked On LA Kings. So for your everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on Monday, we'll recap any news that we have regarding the LA Kings from over the weekend. Wednesday, we'll have a special guest. Friday, our usual fan feedback show. And then Tuesday and Thursday, we'll figure it out. And we appreciate you guys sticking with us throughout the offseason. That's what makes you everydayers, and we appreciate you. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday. And as always, go Kings, go.